Welcome to another episode. And this episode, we have a very special guest. Brandon, please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Brandon Malash. I'm an MBA candidate um, at the University of Windsor. I hold a bachelor's degree in political science with a specialization in law and politics, a bit of constitutional theory there too. And just last year, I started my Master of Business Administration. My focus within it, I'm unable to specialize, but my focus within it is strategy and risk management, and a bit of project management as well. Um, Other interesting things about me, I would say I briefly worked in politics for 3 years. I worked in campaign consulting and policy consulting for about 2 years, and then I worked in strategic campaigning for about 1 year, where I was a member of a 50-person committee that got Aaron O'Toole elected Conservative Party leader in 2020. And then I was part of a 90-member committee that got Pierre Poilievre elected Conservative Party leader in 2022, and a few other ventures on the side here and there. I call myself semi-retired now. I haven't worked in politics in about a year and a half, but it's always been the long-term goal. My greatest dream is to become an elected member of parliament. That's pretty much, professionally speaking, all that's interesting about me. I started university in biochemistry. I did 3 semesters of biochemistry, but I switched my major to political science at the beginning of my second year because it became far too interesting. I had taken 2 politics classes in my first year, and it had become far too interesting just to be a hobby. So that's how I made the switch, and that was the same year I actually got involved in actual political systems here in Canada.
Oh, awesome. And how was the political science program at the University of Windsor?
So I have a bit of an incomplete experience in it because I was only in it for 3 years, whereas most of the people with whom I graduated were in it for a full 4. So these people had a full first year experience. I didn't. I was a science student for my first year, but despite that, I would say that the experience as a political science student at the University of Windsor was very positive. I had a lot of incredibly intriguing professors. Um, I was able to study a little bit of everything in that department. So I was able to study the political theory of religion and historical political philosophy, despite my aversion to philosophy. It's one of my least favorite subjects. But my favorite experience throughout my 3 years in the department was in my seminar experiences. I took 1 seminar in my third year, and then I took 4 in my fourth year, and the concept of a political science seminar was so much fun for me because it was more of a lengthy discussion about something that was very specific and very extensive and very intriguing. So it was, overall, the experience was very, very positive, despite the incomplete nature of it.
Oh, awesome. And speaking of career experiences, so what experiences do you have which kind of influenced your decision to pursue an MBA?
Okay. So again, this might be a bit of an interesting answer. So I have held a few different jobs over my life, and they have absolutely no connection to one another. So my first job was, I worked at a Tim Hortons for 6 years. It was my first job. I started when I was in grade 11, worked half a high school and my entire undergrad at that Tim Hortons. I was there for 6 years. And then my second job was as a paid canvasser for the Essex Writing Association. I was making minimum wage doing campaign canvassing for an individual who was running for a seat in my riding, and he is now the member of Parliament for Essex, Chris Lewis. And then so I worked that position for about 3 months while I was still working at the Tim Hortons, and then in August of 2021, I got the opportunity to get to pursue employment at TD Bank, TD Canada Trust. I went through the hiring process. I ended up getting the job, and I've been working there for about a year and a half now. A few months into my job there was when I started getting the idea of pursuing an MBA. When I started my job there, I saw great security and awesome opportunity, the chance to make a decent living. I never considered pursuing an MBA before working there. I frankly I didn't even know very much about what an MBA was. But one of my coworkers and one of my managers at the time really pushed me to apply. And actually, that manager, her name was Lisa Lapico. Uh, she was uh, she was the branch manager at the time. She's now she holds a different position in our coaching department at TD. Um, and she really pushed me to pursue it, and she was my reference during my application. So I put my application together. The whole process took about 2 months to complete. I submitted my application in March, the last week of March, and then I heard back in June that I had gotten in, and I accepted the offer. Leading up to it, I was trying to think, what could I possibly be doing with an MBA degree, right? And my initial outlook was to continue on in banking, whether that be in retail banking or in commercial banking or investment banking, some sort of banking thing under TD's heading as an institution.
Oh, amazing. And now that you have like spent like the past year and a half, do you think like after you graduate from the MBA, would you pursue a career in the banking industry?
So I definitely wouldn't rule it out. I'm a person who likes to have a contingency plan for a contingency plan. Um, and I would also note at this point that the MBA program has presented me with a ton of opportunities, and it has revealed to me affinities and skills that I didn't even know I had, or that I didn't even know I cared about. So right now, I am pursuing as my primary plan a career in management consulting, or just in consulting generally. Um, I'm hoping to get some good experience from that co-op I mentioned. I'm doing a co-op um, with an organization called the Blueprint Toolset, um, in uh, based out of London, Ontario. It's a remote co-op, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to do it. So I'm hoping for some experience there, and I hope that translates into a position, either there permanently or with another consulting firm. That's my primary goal. Secondarily, I absolutely would not rule out pursuing something in banking at all. It's been a great job. There's excellent opportunity there. Um, I'm pretty much open to whatever opportunity presents itself. I haven't been able to specialize because I don't have a business background. I don't have a business undergrad. So non-business undergrads aren't allowed to specialize in an MBA environment. So I'm approaching it with as general of an attitude as I can.
Fantastic. And so, what are some new concepts which you were introduced into in the MBA program, which you don't which you didn't have prior exposure to in your political science program and your career positions so far?
Okay, sure. So when I graduated from my undergrad, the only thing I knew about businesses was that they were overtaxed and overregulated. Now that's the political side of it, right? Um, when I started working at the bank, the only thing I learned about businesses is that they have specific accounts and they do specific things, most of which are protected by a big piece of legislation called the Financial Information Protection Act. So I can't exactly be talking about what it is that they do regulate, but I learned a little bit about that. Um, so I learned very little about business working whatsoever, or in my previous education. But since starting this MBA, I have learned a completely new swath of information. In my cohort, we started with 40 students. We now have 36. Of the 36 of us, I would say about two-thirds are business majors. The other third are not. About a dozen of us are not. And we were at a disadvantage, all of us, because this was brand new information. We had never heard of it, but it was taught in such a way that it was understandable. So some of the newest things that I learned about various applications of accounting, some of the financial things I had learned at the bank, but I learned things like the discounted cash flow measure. That's one of the best ways to measure the valuation of a company. And through other classes like my project management class, which ironically it started rather rough, but it has ironically become one of my favorite classes. It Through that class I learned how to put together, tailored presentations for specific clients, for specific projects we were working on. But by far, my favorite class has been my strategic management class at the University of Windsor with Dr. Jerry Kerr. If anyone who's listening has ever had a class with him, he's one of the most animated, most passionate, most intellectual professors you will ever have. And he's great. He's fantastic. So this strategic management class has taught me about it's the summation of everything else that we've learned. So it's the summation of all the accounting, all the finance, all the marketing, all of this type of thing, right? So truthfully, it's been a whole new set of information. I have learned so much new information throughout this process. I'm using very little of what I learned in my undergrad to carry over.
Oh, that's amazing. And what are some advices you would like to give to, I would say, undergraduate students who like are pursuing a program, but also considering doing graduate studies in something unrelated to their program or sometimes related? So, what is your advice to help them decide what they want to pursue as a graduate study?
Okay. Thank you for the question. That's an important question to ask, especially because people who are in university for a four-year undergraduate degree, many of them usually don't know exactly what's going on immediately after. So it's a very good question to ask. Um, so when you're pursuing an undergraduate degree, there usually you take one of three avenues afterward. You either begin working immediately. That's number one. Number two is you pursue a graduate degree. Or number three is you pursue a professional degree. Professional degrees are graduate degrees, graduate level degrees that are specifically tailored to one thing. So medicine, law, actually an MBA is considered a professional degree as well. It's considered both a graduate and a professional degree. But this is just an example. So these are the three avenues that people usually take. For those people who are seeking to pursue the second or third avenue, I would really group these types of people into one of two groups. Um, People who are pursuing a graduate degree in a field that's either directly or mainly directly related to something in which they have studied in their undergrad. For example, if somebody who, like me, pursued a bachelor's in political science is looking for a master's in political science or something very, very similar, like a master's degree in history or a master's degree in philosophy, these are very common things that happen with poli-sci students. If you're considering that, the advice I would give you is the following. First, find as many professors as possible to be potential references for you during the application process, because the application process is long and it's annoying. Second, develop a plan of what exactly you're going to apply for at least a year in advance. I did not do that when I was going through the process, so learn from my mistake. And third, and most importantly, take the finance part of it, take the cost part of it into consideration, but by no means let that be the only thing you consider. There are excellent programs at other institutions that have higher price tags, of course, than institutions that may be closer to home. But it's excellent to gain experience, A, living away from home, and B, simply at another institution, because there are great professors everywhere, and it should be a goal to learn from as many of them as possible. That's for people who are pursuing something, very similar or the same as what they studied in their undergrad. If you're looking to study something completely different from what you've studied in your undergrad, like I did, there's the first thing I would say is buckle up, because it's going to be an interesting time. It's going to be an interesting journey. Um, you will more than likely, unless you take specific classes in your undergrad that piqued your interest in this, like somebody in my position, if somebody in my position took, in addition to political science classes, some business classes in his or her undergrad, then that person would have been more prepared for the information change in the environment into which I stepped. But in general, if you're looking to study something completely different, number one, it's possible. Number two, it's actually encouraged. These programs encourage diverse applications. And they very, very much want people with diverse applications to apply. And practically speaking, all it takes is some genuine hard work, um, And by that, by no means am I saying spend all of your time and neglect your social life studying something you've never heard of. Again, I made that mistake in my first semester. I would not advise it. It's not a good idea. You do not need to spend all of your time doing that. But all it requires is some good old fashioned hard work. You will more than likely not be at the top of your class, at least in the beginning, because it's an information switch, right? But that does not mean that you cannot be at the top of your class later on. So that's the advice I would give
Oh, yeah, thank you so much for those amazing insights. And are there any separate advices you would like to give to high school students?
to high school students, specifically regarding what we just
Regard
talked about with
Yeah, regarding entering university, deciding what they want to start with as a program, because like in high school, the thing is they might not have decided what their passion is.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. So my first reaction to that would be pursuing post-secondary education is a very serious decision, and it should never involve just one party. It should never involve only the person who's making the decision. It's important to get other people's takes on this. It's important to understand that if you want to study something for 4 years, you have to have not only an affinity for it, but you have to have a particular skill for it that's backed up by other people, like not just friends, but teachers at your high school. So that's where I would start with that. I would go on to say that specifically regarding university, university is obviously not for everybody. It really isn't. Um, if you do not know for certain that you want to go to university, I would strongly advise you against going to university. Um, whether that be taking 1 year off and 1 year only to make this decision, or by going to a college and then transferring credits over. If you do not know upon graduating high school what you want to do in terms of whether or if you want to go to university for sure, then do not go. Either take a year off or go to a college first and then transfer those credits over. And then I would also add, if you have no idea what you want to do at all, like whether or if you want to pursue any post-secondary education, or whether you're confused as to which type of post-secondary education you should pursue, um, then I would also say, the best thing to do would be to take a year off, a half a year or a full year, to understand the conditions of the world, and maybe get some additional validation as to what you're good at, where your skill set lies, and then you can make that decision. Because I'm going to say something really controversial right now. 18 years old is far too young for most people to understand what they want to do for the rest of their lives. Um, it really is. It's far too young. I truthfully did not know for sure what I wanted to do with the rest of my life until I was in my early 20s. And I technically still am in my early 20s, but a couple of years ago, that's when I started seeing all the pieces fall into place. So it took me an extra 3 years. So suffice to say, if you do not know what you want to do with the rest of your life, or you don't know what education you want to pursue, that is perfectly fine, because the majority of people feel this way. Even if they tell you, I know for sure that I want to study engineering or math or philosophy, or insert any name of any subject, some of them are lying to you. Just, I'm going to put it flat out like that. Some of them are lying to you. Most people like that were pushed into it by their parents or by their employers or something else, and maybe that would be their thing. Maybe it's very possible. But there's always that equal possibility that it's not. So I would conclude my answer, because I know that was a bit of a jumbly answer. I would conclude my answer by saying this: education is very important. It really, really is. These days, the overwhelming majority of people, I think most measures say between 80 and 90%, cannot get by with just a high school diploma. That means that education is a must, whether that be through an apprenticeship, through a community college, or through a university, or further education beyond that. Um, it is a way to sharpen a skill set, to develop a new skill set, and to get ready for the things of the workforce, the various aspects of the workforce that we have to deal with as working people. And all throughout that, it's always necessary to have a support system in place. I know a lot of people do not have a good support system in place, but it's important to seek one out, whether or if you have the facilities to do so. Um, that exist right now. It's very easy to do. It's as simple as making friends, even. So that's how I would conclude my question. Educate or my answer, excuse me. Education is very important. Um, it is a must, but it is by no means that statement is by no means a statement saying you must absolutely pursue university. There are, of course, there are other options for people with different skill sets.
Yeah, that's a very valuable advice. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, and thank you for being a guest speaker on my channel.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was a lot of fun. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.